But thank you all so much for joining us for best-selling author Kelley Armstrong, who will discuss her new mystery, Cold as Hell, a Havens Rock novel, in this installment of Author Hour in Massachusetts. And she needs no introduction, but here it is. Number one New York Times best-selling author Kelley Armstrong is the author of more than 50 novels in mystery, fantasy, and horror. I think when you include the anthologies and the novellas, I think she's around almost 200 books published. Kelley believes experience is the best teacher, though she's been told this shouldn't apply to writing her murder scenes. To craft her books, Kelley has studied adaku. No, I'm not even going to try it. Archery and fencing, but she sucks at all of them. Her own words. Kelley has also crawled through very shallow cave systems and climbed half a mountain before chickening out. She is, however, an expert coffee drinker and a true connoisseur of chocolate chip cookies. So, folks, let's give Kelley a big virtual round of applause for being with us tonight. Thanks so much, Kelley.
Thank you.
Kelley, I think you and I have a lot in common from that description there. I too am a big connoisseur of chocolate chip cookies.
Yep.
All right, so Kelley, let's get right into it. Could you let the audience know a little bit about your latest mystery, which was just published a couple of weeks ago, Cold as Hell? What can you tell us about it while avoiding spoilers?
Avoiding spoilers. Yeah, sure. It is book 3 in my Havens Rock series. But as much as possible, I do try to construct each book so that if you pick it up by itself, it should still work for you. The basic premise for this series is small town in the Yukon where people go to disappear. So they are murder mysteries set in a very small, at this point, I think they're at 70 people, town, off the grid, up the north. If you're not familiar with the Yukon, we call it Canada's Alaska. So it is very much that kind of a place. It is the size of Texas with a population of 40,000 people, two-thirds of whom live in a city, and that is not where we are. Now, there's often a thought about Alaska and the Yukon being very much winter all the time. They are not at all. The summers are gorgeous, but this particular novel is set in the winter.
Yeah, I really enjoy the setting, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the origins of Havens Rock?
Mhm. Yeah, so it's actually a spin-off series. So the original series, which again does not have to be read first. The idea was this small town in the Yukon where people go to disappear, and my detective ending up there. The original one, Rockton, it was run by some people who did not live there and were trying to run it for profit, which always works really, really well with those humanitarian types of scenarios. So obviously, problems, murder mystery series, death, death, death. So finally, they shut down the town, and the group of actual residents who really want to help people started their new town. Of course, they are finding that this does not always go according to a plan. And as much as they are doing, there are still holes in their process, as they discover in this book.
Yes, there are still problems, and death, death, death under the new system as well. So I listened to this book over the past 2 days. I really enjoyed it. Like you said, I had not read books 1 and 2 in the series, and I had not read the prior original series, and I still really, really enjoyed this book. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your main character, your female protagonist, um, Casey, and
Mm-hmm.
what let us know what is particularly interesting about Casey at this point in time.
At this point in time, we have seen Casey come a long way. She has a difficult background. She was a detective, a Canadian detective on a major crimes squad, coming from some problems in her own background that made her possibly need to vanish. But we have worked her through this. At this point, she is married, has been married for a while, and is pregnant with her first child. Somewhat unexpectedly, there has been back and forth in the series, but there was some uncertainty about whether she could actually carry a child. So she is pregnant. She is 8 months pregnant. It is not particularly going smoothly, but she has held in this long and just has to finish up, possibly needing some medical help, except Blizzard and Killer.
Right. So, folks, she's still solving crimes. She's 8 months pregnant, having contractions. So that sort of adds an extra layer of difficulty. Something else that's interesting about Casey is the dynamic she has with her boss, the sheriff. Kelley, who is Casey's boss? What is their relationship?
Casey's boss is also her husband, which has been an ongoing thing. Now, certainly, once we reach this point, they don't really consider it, but he is sheriff, she is detective, and there's a deputy. They're mostly sort of holding on to those titles, but there's not in the original series. There was very much he was in charge according to the town. Now that they can run it, it is far more that they are on a relatively equal footing. But there is still always that back and forth between, am I dealing with my husband? Am I dealing with the sheriff? So yes, I do deal with some power dynamics there.
And it's a whole family affair. She's a supporting character, but Casey's sister is also one of the characters. I'm wondering if you could touch upon her role in the whole society, but also could you talk about writing a character who is neurodiverse?
Yeah, so Casey's sister is now. When we were back in Rockton, we discovered that Casey has had a very rocky relationship with her older sister. I believe she's 5 years older. Don't test me on that. I always have to look these things up, but very rocky, and it was because she is on the spectrum but was not diagnosed. So her parents, as Casey recalls now, actively fought a diagnosis, probably to April's detriment. So April, brilliant neurosurgeon, is on the spectrum. So a lot of what Casey perceived as her sister's problems with her sister's actions toward her behavior toward her, was far more due to this. So they have now worked on repairing that relationship as Casey attempts to meet her where she is, rather than expecting April to come to where Casey is. Casey understanding what April means and meeting her where she is at.
I'm sure you're used to it with all your fantasy novels, but I thought you did a really good job in world building, and in the sense that I felt like I was in the setting. I could feel the snow and the cold and the ice and the wildlife and the forest, and you did a really good job of being really descriptive, but without being too descriptive, if that makes any sense. Where do you find that line between describing the surroundings, but not perhaps to the detriment of the rest of the story?
Yeah, and it really is that, I mean, trying to immerse myself in that. We do spend part of our year in the Yukon, the summers usually. And we do go up for a week in the winter. It gets very, very cold. So I do have a sense of that, and I can bring that in. What's it like to be that cold? What's it like to be there during snowstorm, blizzard? But I want to give the reader a sense, particularly when you're in a blizzard, what that's like without, page upon page of okay, I get it, move on. So you just want them to have that real sense of, they should feel that chill. They should feel what it's like to be out there, struggling along, unable to see, even on a path that they know very, very well, unable to see anything when you can't even see your trees on either side of your path, having no idea where you are.
And when you say that they're hard to find and that it's rather remote, you're not joking. Can you very briefly touch on the bathroom situation, Kelley?
We had some fun with the bathroom situation because again, you're trying to figure out how does this work, and because this is a new town, they've attempted to make some changes. So instead of having more small dwellings with people having to have roommates, they've gone to more of a dormitory style. So you have a small personal area, larger common areas, and then shared bathrooms. So the opening is the actual plumber, who can't use the bathroom because they have, they've had that situation where if you've ever been on a septic tank, which we are here and we are in the Yukon, you can't put anything down it. But people keep putting things down the septic tank and it clogs up. And then they need parts. So two of them, so they've got three in this one building. Two of them are not working. They're waiting on parts. She's saying, I'm going to need to get like backup parts because you can't just run to the nearest hardware store. They have to get them on their next trip. So yes, that kind of launches why Kendra is out in the cold at midnight because she is unable to use the bathroom, because if there's only one and the bar just had last call, that bathroom is probably busy.
And Kelley, I think we can talk about what happens to Kendra because it's in the first,
Mm-hmm.
couple chapters of the book. I think it's even referenced on the book cover, so I don't think it's a spoiler.
Yeah.
So what does happen to Kendra? What kicks all this off?
What kicks all? So Kendra is she is both. Everyone up there has to play multiple roles. So she is by trade a social worker. She also knows plumbing, and she's from a northern community. So she is indigenous, comes from a northern community, and she has been at the bar. It has had last call. She's only had like 1.5 drinks, but she is woozy. She was inside. She comes outside to use the outdoor toilet, and is woozy, like in and out and going, this is not what happens after 1.5 drinks. Realizes that she has been dosed and she's in and out of consciousness, and someone does try to grab her, but somebody else comes on the scene and she is able to escape. So in a very, very small town like with 70 people, to have somebody who has dosed a woman in the bar is a huge problem. So then, of course, it's all hands on deck trying to find out who did this. Was Kendra the actual target, or was somebody just randomly trying to get any woman there?
And Kelley, these 70 people were all presumably vetted.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff and the police, quote unquote, they know who all these people are, presumably. So it is really concerning that there's violence, and the violence escalates fairly quickly. So you definitely do a good job of grabbing the reader's attention from the first few pages. Wondering, well, before we get to some broader questions, I do have to say that I did really enjoy the scenes with Storm the dog. Okay. And I didn't want to, you could do pretty much anything with most of those 70 folks, whether some of them perish or not. Just don't do anything to the dog, Kelley. Okay. I hope the dog survives the next 2 books in the series, but I enjoyed the tracking that the dog attempted to do anyway. That was really interesting. Any thoughts on the dog that you'd like to share with us, Kelley? And can you promise that he'll be okay for the next 2 books?
Oh yeah. I mean, Storm is getting older. She is a Newfoundland, and they are a very big Mastiff-like dog, so they do have a shorter lifespan. But yes, she is middle aged now. But it was that Eric, who is the sheriff, wanted to get Casey a dog, and wanted the type of dog that she's always wanted, which is a Newfoundland, and decided that that could work for a tracking dog. They are not trackers. So Casey has obviously worked very hard to turn Storm into as much of a tracking dog as possible. But honestly, when you're dealing with this kind of a story, you don't want the world's best tracking dog, because then they could just easily find everybody. So you want a dog that's pretty good, really good for a Newfoundland, but definitely not a bloodhound.
There you go. I didn't know where to work that in on the discussion, but I wanted to make sure we got to the dog. Now, Kelley, taking a step backwards, and I misgendered the dog. I'm sorry, it's a female dog. So taking a step backwards, can you talk a bit about what, in your opinion, makes for a good mystery? What are some of the elements you need to have a good mystery novel?
Yeah, so for mystery, what I look for as a reader and what I hope I do as a writer is lots of revelations, lots of secrets, lots of revelations, lots of things not being what I expect. I want those as a reader. What I want is to be trying to figure it out. I love puzzles. So I'm constantly trying to figure out, okay, could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? And you're hoping to be just a little ahead of the detective. And I always say that the ideal situation I find for a novel is if the reader figures it out, they figure it out just before the detective does. Like not too early, or then the detective looks like they're incompetent. But also to, if they don't figure it out, hopefully after the reveal, they can look back and say, yes, that does make total sense.
And so, without getting into spoilers, what was interesting to me anyway is when I read mysteries, we tend to get the whodunit reveal at the very end. You, in this particular book, I would say, gave it to us probably at the two-thirds or maybe
Mm-hmm.
three-fourths
Yeah.
percentage. So we actually kind of they solved the case, but then the last third of the book they actually had to capture the culprit. And of course, they're doing it during a blizzard with all these sorts of different extenuating circumstances going on. But I found that to be really interesting. So, where do you draw the line between, like you said, you want the audience to be able to kind of figure it out, but at the same time you don't want to make it too obvious, but at the same time you don't want the solution to come kind of out of left field. How do you balance all those things?
Editors, readers, like early readers, editors. I mean, I will have my editors and some others who will read it, and I will say, did you figure it out? If so, when? And sometimes those who know my work very well will sometimes figure it out a little bit early, because they'll be like, I saw this clue right here, and that told me, like, oh, okay, I have to now go in and massage that just a bit. Because if you know my type of, my style or that, they'll be like, okay, this is where I figured it out. And so I'll do a slight tweak if it seems a little bit early. But I really do, because I can't myself tell what's too much, too little. So I need them to say, did they figure it out early? At what point did they figure it out? And if they didn't figure it out, then after we find out who it is, can they look back and say, oh, yes, I totally get it now?
And maybe you don't want to reveal this or not, but for this particular book, did you make edits to make it a little bit more difficult or a little easier for the audience to figure it out based on what you
If I
originally wrote?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, not for this one. I think that it was the one before it where there was like something was said or done that was supposed to be a clue, but for one of my readers, it was too strong of a clue where they were like, "I got it right there," and I'm like, oh, "Okay, then let me adjust that."
Well, with this one, I thought you did a great job. There were multiple suspects and motives and red herrings, and I thought that I didn't quite figure it out until they solved it for me. So, and then even once the solve happened, then I thought actually things picked up even further with the trying to actually apprehend the suspect. So what is so this is the third book in what I believe is a 5-book series.
Yeah.
Can you talk about don't have to go into great detail. Can you talk about the first 2 books in the series, And then, and again, maybe you're not permitted to tell us what's happening, but if you want, could you kind of tease what might be happening in book number 4?
Yeah. So book number one was when the town was still under construction. What that allowed me to do, which was helpful, was to not have all my. So I have a group of past characters from Rockton and a group of new characters from Havens Rock. I didn't want to plunk all the past characters into like chapter 1 of Murder at Havens Rock, or new readers would be, just lost. So instead, I brought in my, Casey and Eric and Storm at the beginning. And so then we got to meet the new characters and then slowly adding in as they applied. So it was with the construction, it was that two construction workers had disappeared. So it was to do with the construction team. And then book 2 is that this is back at Rockton, they did not allow in families, couples, anything. And so one thing that they wanted to change was allowing in families and couples. So they have a mother and 2 sons, and one of the sons gets kidnapped. So that was clearly not anything that they expected. So that's what happens in book 2. Book 3 is that one, and book 4 we have had from book 1. We discovered that there was another settlement starting of mining. There was a mining settlement starting, and that's a problem, a big problem, because they were not there when they started construction, but there was some gold found. So there's a mining operation. It's been in the background, and then we get to resolve that one in book 4. And what are they really doing there? Because gold mining doesn't quite explain the security, as we've already said in the series. The amount of security for this seems a bit much for a gold mine. There is plenty of gold because it is still the Yukon, but it's a bit much for that. So I get to solve that mystery in the book 4.
Wonderful. Excellent. So we already have about a dozen questions from the audience. So I think I'll transition to audience questions a little earlier than I expected, but then I will throw in some of my own questions as we go. So I'm first going to address questions that were emailed in advance, and we're just going to jump all over the place, okay? So Catherine asks, do you think you'll ever explore the paranormal romance genre again? Not necessarily the women of the other world, although I'd love that, but I feel no one writes werewolves and witches quite like you. I've noticed they have become quite trendy again, so I had hoped that maybe we would see something like that from you. So any thoughts on doing some more paranormal romance in the future?
It's always possible. I mean, obviously, it is becoming, we're seeing it cycle back in. These things cycle. It's like they're in, then they're really out, then they're back in. If I ever was to do it, it would not be like going back to past characters in the other world, because there's so many books, 13 books, umpteen novellas, short stories. I could not, my brain would not be able to jump back into those characters.
All right, so that question was from Catherine. Mickey has a few short questions. Mickey asks, will there be a Highland Fling short like there was from At the Edge of the World?
Oh, Highland Fling, so that would be yes. At this point, no. It is possible. That is a rom-com that I do, because yes, I do everything. So that one is a rom-com with a romance author. So at this point, no, but it's always possible that getting closer to it, I may write a little something for fun.
Do you have any plans for another rom-com currently?
No, not currently, because I've got a lot going on.
Any stories that will be set by Lake Huron or Lake Michigan?
Mm-hmm. Lake Huron or Lake Michigan. I believe that so 3 of the horror is Ontario, 4 is Michigan. So yes, and book 4, although it doesn't play much of a role, but I just set it near it.
Mickey's final question: will there be a sub-press book in December of 2025?
We'll see. There will likely be a Rip Through Time novella. I've actually written it, so it's just a matter of deciding if that's the route I'm going to go or not.
So here's a question from Christina, and frankly, I had a similar question. I'll ask Christina. Christina says you publish at least 3 books a year
Mm-hmm.
across many different genres. How do you keep all of the stories straight? Do you write one at a time, or are you working on multiples at once?
I write one at a time. I really have to. I want to start a book and finish it. I can't be jumping from one story to another. So right now I am working in the Rip Through Time series. And so I will be completely immersed in that as I am writing it. And then from there, I'm probably jumping into the last Havens Rock, because that will be next up on my list. And then I'll finish that. And as for how I keep a track of it, I have Bibles. So I have for years had people doing Bibles. I currently have a wonderful woman who takes them and turns them into a Bible for me. So I can do things like, okay, how much older is April than Casey? Because I think 5 years, but I could be wrong. So all that kind of stuff that I can jump back in and be checking.
So Samantha says that she finished Cold as Hell last night, and it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Vicky says that the audiobooks that your audiobooks rock, and she is a big fan of Casey.
Yeah, Teresa does a great job on that.
Yeah, like I said, I listened to it over the past 48 hours. It was really well done. Enid says that the whole series rocks, and they love Casey and Dalton. Jennifer says Rockton and Havens Rock are the best series. I highly recommend both. Let's see here. So Enid asks, will there be more storylines involving Matthias? I'm not quite sure if I...
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Enid really enjoyed the character.
Yep. So we certainly get to see him in Cold as Hell. He kind of pops, he is best in small doses. So we certainly get to see him in Cold as Hell in the way that he pops up best.
Yes.
Yes. So yes, you will see him. He comes and goes. It really depends on whether or not I can make good use of him for a certain book.
So Jen asks, is there any chance the Rockton Havens Rock series will be turned into a TV show? It would be excellent material. What do we think? Mm-hmm. I just finished watching Paradise on Hulu, Kelley. I need a new series. You think we can get this into production?
Rockton has been very interesting because it has had a lot of interest, like nonstop interest. People are trying to turn it into something, optioning it, falls out of option, somebody else tries. The thing about movie and TV options is that we can't say much, but I can say that that we are on a very good. Yeah, there is something good has happened, and I can't talk about it. But yes, we are at least at a point along that which is above just somebody being interested in it. We just have this weird thing where, yes, you can't talk because they don't want to talk until they're ready to announce something. So authors are often like, I'd love to tell you, but I can't.
So you had done Women of the Otherworld, though. That was made into a TV series, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So there we go. There's precedent. All right.
Yep.
We may get there, folks. Susan says, I loved your Women of the Otherworld series. Do you have any more supernatural ideas brewing? You touched on that previously. Anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, you might also see something supernatural coming out from me. There's something that is brewing for in a couple of years, because obviously Havens Rock is winding up. So it is possible that you will see something falling into that slot, which would be not so much urban fantasy paranormal romance as something that would be mystery with a supernatural angle.
Jennifer says, hi, Kelley. You're my favorite author. Can you tell me how you're able to write so many books each year?
You and I, Robert, we were talking a bit about this beforehand. So the story is that when Bitten came out 24 years ago, our daughter was 8, and our sons were 6 months old and 20 months old, which meant that I then was finally gotten published, I was expected to do a book a year. So I was doing a book a year with very small children. And let me tell you, you are grabbing minutes every possible place. You are at doctor's appointments and stuff with your pad of paper, writing down while you're in the waiting room. You're at your games, writing stuff down. So as the kids got older, I was adding on stuff. So you would see the Nadia or the YA coming on. Well, now those kids are not kids. They are all, the youngest is almost 24. So that means way more time. And just sort of juggling with what I'm doing with that time. I love to write. I absolutely love writing. It is never really a chore for me. So if I have spare time, I mean, I certainly do lots of other things, but I still enjoy writing. So it has also become very much like anything else. If you do it enough, it becomes easier and easier. So early books took me forever to write. Now it very much is, I can sit down in the afternoon and write for a couple of hours and get 2,000 words in, which is my usual thing. And it's very easy for me.
So Chad asks, and this is kind of a little vague, but I think we'll keep it that way. Chad asks, is there anything major you want to do that you haven't done yet?
No, and that gets harder and harder to answer, right? Because certainly, like early on in my career, I would think it'd be great to have a TV show, and I had a TV show. It'd be great to do graphics, and I did some graphic stuff. It'd be great to do short stories, novellas. For many years it was horror. I was writing horror I've been doing short stories in horror in anthologies for many years. That's probably the thing that I do the most in short fiction is horror, dark fantasy. And it was because there wasn't really an opening in that horror market for a full-length novel from me. And the horror market has expanded so much lately. Okay, horror is always very small. But an expansion is huge. It's actually hitting mainstream more, which has allowed me to actually write full-length horror. So that was sort of the thing on my wish list, but I've got that now. So I don't know.
So our next question comes from Karen. Karen and her 13-year-old daughter love your books, wondering if they can expect any more teen paranormal novels in the near future.
I don't think you're going to see more teen paranormal just now. I do have another teen novel coming out in January, which is A Deadly Inheritance, I believe is the title. And it is a bit of dark academia, but there's no real paranormal there. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really looking forward to it. But it's really leaning a little more towards mystery and a thriller with some gothic in there.
So Vicky has a urgent request. Would love to see more romance between Mallory and Duncan.
And so would my
Catherine
editor. So it's actually funny because my editor at Minotaur, who has done the Havens Rock and Rockton and now Rip, she's not a romance. She's editor. She's obviously mystery. But once I got to like book 3 of Rip through time, she was like, okay, I'm not a romance reader per se, but when is this romance happening? I am doing the slowest of slow burns, but it is coming, guaranteed, and it is coming relatively soon. Every book you're going to see it ramping up, and you'll be able to tell that it is coming soon.
So Leanne had a question about Otherworld, which you've already answered, but I will read her comment. She says, I love both your Casey and Duncan mysteries. It was genius to move the setting and some of the characters to a new location, really avoided tiring out that series and gave the characters new life. So that comes from Leanne, and I know from firsthand experience, Leanne knows her books. Christina's question was already answered as well. So Morgan writes, in one of the Nadia Stafford novellas, we see a crossover of Rockton characters and Nadia characters. Are we going to see more of Nadia and Jack in Havens Rock?
Not at this moment, but I have often thought I would love to do a novella there, with some reason for them. So my Nadia Stafford were the first one came out, I think 2007. So they were a trilogy with the main character is a hit woman. As my publishers called it, an ethical hit woman, and I'm not really sure what that means, but the whole like only kills people who deserve it kind of thing. So yes, so there is a crossover novella already, because obviously Havens Rock and Rockton have some characters who are on the run, and a former sheriff of Rockton was a hitman. So we did see him appear in a Nadia novella, which does mean that those two series exist in the same fictional universe, and there is some opening there.
So Charity asks, are you ever going to go back to the Stitch in Time series? Will we ever see a new book in that series?
Probably not a new book, but there is a possibility of a novella, because I know that I did what I was doing. That is time travel, but they are ghosts, and they are romance, and they are mystery, as opposed to Rip Through Time, which is historical mystery, very, very clearly historical mystery without any of that. So we had book, novella, book, novella, book, no novella. So the last one, the main characters did not get a novella, and it was mostly I was short on time and couldn't decide whether to give them their own novella or to bring all the characters together for one. So yes, maybe.
And here's another series we'd like you to return to. Carla says, I loved your Canesville series. Will you ever revisit that story world?
I don't know. I love Canesville. I really do. That was my series coming off of Otherworld, and I just wrote whatever I wanted. So it was so much fun. Whether I ever revisit it would mostly be if I had another series that I felt existed in the same fictional universe, would allow some crossover, but not right now.
Morgan asks, will we ever see more Chloe and Derek as adults? We got teasers in the Logan Kate book, but I'd love to see more. They were my introduction to your novels. So I think we're talking Darkest Powers.
We are. That is Darkest Powers. Yeah. So yes, you got some in the Kate and Logan. There was also a short story of them when they were in college age, Comfort Zone, I think it was. And I don't know. That one's something that I could return to. If I ever have that, urge to get back to that now that they are adults.
So Karen writes, I want to send a belated thank you for sharing your writing during COVID. You are my favorite writer because of your books, but your social presence with your fans makes me love you even more.
Thank you.
We've been talking about all your past series. Lauren wants to know, do you have any new series coming that we should know about?
Nothing right now, but yes, something will follow up, obviously, once Havens Rock closes. I am already thinking of what is coming next and talking to my publishers and coming up with something. So I do have something which, of course, I'm excited about, but can't talk because it's still a few years out.
So Christina wants to know, will you ever revisit the Curse and Luck Weavers again? The Curse Luck series was so much fun.
It was, and that was my COVID series. That was that I was supposed to be writing a YA thriller, and it was the only time in my career that I have been unable to make a deadline. I had to say, I can't make this. I cannot write this dark thriller in dark times. Like, I kept wanting to, wrap my teens in bubble wrap. I did not want them to have anything bad to happen. And they were lovely and let me postpone it for a year. So instead, I did this very fun, heisty light urban fantasy duology, which I was posting the first one online free because it was COVID. But then once I was done those, two, I kind of went back to being wanting darker stuff.
So this question's from Jason. How does your book change from the idea to the outline to the finished manuscript? Do the characters ever surprise you, or does the book take a turn that you didn't initially expect? And along those lines, I'm legally required to ask every author I interview, Kelley, are you a pantser or are you a plotter?
I'm somewhere down the middle. And it is that, yes. So I sometimes publishers want an outline before I write something, and it's usually because they want to take it to sales or something and say, "Here's what Kelley plans to write." And I always call those my greatest works of fiction ever because I don't follow those. I mean, they follow it in a very basic way. If I say the book is about this, the book will be about that, and the major points will follow that. I'm not going to give them something completely different. But the actual book, I do love to go back and read my pitches and outlines just to see how far off they were from the actual book. Because once I start writing, the characters come to life in a way that I can't make them come to life until I write them. And once they come to life, I see new possibilities, or I see that things that I had planned for them aren't going to work. So the story does evolve as I am working it. I've never been able to actually stick to an outline, and I think that's okay. I always say for any writers out there, an outline is like having a general idea of where you want to go. You are not tied into that. Even if the publisher bought the book based on the outline, nobody has ever come back to me and said you didn't exactly follow your outline. They just want that I've generally given them the basic idea of what I pitched.
And so you just included some advice in that response, but more generally, do you have any additional advice that you might give to aspiring writers?
Advice is often, obviously things like reading, because you're critically reading for what do you like, what works for you. Because it's one thing to want to write for an audience, and that's great, but really, I feel like for myself, the first audience that I'm writing for is me. If I try writing for an imaginary audience, that's when things fall flat. The first book that I got published was The Bitten, and I wrote that one for me because I'd written multiple books before that nobody wanted. And I said, okay, fine. Instead of trying to write what I think the market wants, I'm going to write the book that I think nobody wants except me. And not surprisingly, that book sold. So it's kind of been my guiding, light there is when you see me changing genres, it's because I really want to write that book. I read that genre. I really want to write that book, even if it's not necessarily in the wheelhouse of what I'm doing now.
So Kelley, I'm sure you get this question during every conversation, during every interview, during every Q&A. It's probably like picking your favorite child. But Catherine asks, which character that you created is your favorite, and which couple is your favorite?
And I don't usually have one because yes, and it is, and authors you'll probably often hear them say it's whatever one I'm doing now because that's the one that you're currently working with. So I'm working heavily with Rip Through Time, Mallory, and Duncan. But I've been with Eric and Casey for a long time. So they are very special to me. So those longer relationships where I have been working with a couple over multiple books, Clay and Elena from The Other World. I will say that Chloe and Derek will always be very special to me because that was my first YA, and the response to it was way beyond what my publishers, anybody expected. So that made it very special.
So we have Vicky and Karen asking similar questions, but essentially Karen wants to know, what have you read this year that you really enjoyed? So essentially, who are some of the authors that you read that you really enjoy?
Okay, so I will quickly pull up because I am absolutely horrible with if I start going, what name is that? I am awful. So what have I read recently that I really liked? Mira Grant, Sean and McGuire, Rolling in the Deep, which was a novella that she wrote. I had read the novel that came after it, and now I'm going to totally blank. Killer Mermaids. So she wrote a novel after this, but this was the prequel novella. So I read them in the reverse order. Um, I've just finished Fourth Wing, which I had not read, but was like, you know what, I really should, read this, and I enjoyed it. A lot of times I do not read what is currently super popular, but I really enjoyed that one. All the Murmuring Bones, AJ Slatter, um, Veronica Roth's When Among Crows. So you can see that I am kind of don't fear the Reaper. Stephen Graham Jones, his stuff is so good.
Yeah.
His horror. So Full Speed to a Crash Landing, Beth Revis, which is science fiction heist. I mean, you can tell that I am all over the place. So that is why I write in every genre. Is
Yeah.
you can just see books that I have really enjoyed recently are in all different genres.
Yeah, it's funny. Your reading tastes kind of match your writing habits there. So
Yep.
Catherine wants to. Could you clarify for Catherine when is the next Dark Academia book planned for?
That one I believe is January. Don't quote me because they occasionally move that one around, but from what I know, we are scheduled for January.
So Paige says, I absolutely love all the books you write. I first found you in the Darkest Power series. Would you do more signings or appearances in Canada, as I would love the opportunity to meet you in person and get all my books signed? I know you have a
I
website.
do them, yeah.
Yeah, you do have
Yeah.
an events page on your website that lists all your Canada book signings. So I would definitely encourage
Yeah,
folks
check
to
that
look
out.
there.
I know that this year I'm scheduled for London, Ontario, which is where I grew up and it's my closest city. So, not surprisingly, Burlington for a horror fest, and Calgary for When Words Collide, a big multi genre fest. So, you do see me. And if you do see me somewhere, please do feel free to bring all of your books. People always apologize for bringing a stack. I have had people bring in like rolling luggage. I've written a lot and I have no problem signing everything that is brought.
Lauren says, thank you. Your books have been an amazing gift over the years. And if you ever want to come down to the U.S., she says Pennsylvania is a nice place to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Sam says, Darkest Powers made me fall in love with your writing. I'm just wondering if you could touch on following your dreams to become a writer. Yeah, so Kelley, what is the
Mm-hmm.
Kelley Armstrong origin story? How did you get into writing?
I got into writing by reading. I was reading young, and that quickly turned into what we would now call fan fiction. Except I was 3, 4, 5, and telling stories about characters in books that I had read. So I would, and then as soon as I could write them down, I was writing stories, short stories, all through elementary school, novellas in high school, in university. I wrote nothing because there was essays and more essays. But once I got out, I joined writing groups, took writing courses, and started writing novels. So as I said, I'd written a few novels in my 20s that I thought were correct for the market. None of them went anywhere until I decided I was going to write this book about a female werewolf that clearly nobody would ever want to read except me.
And Chad says that he just wanted to agree with an earlier comment about how you engage with your fans. It's a great community and they appreciate it. Jenny hopes that if you come down to America, hopes your tour will take you to Northern California. Let's see, I think I've gotten all questions and comments. Catherine wants to know if you'll be doing a signing in Calgary anytime soon.
Calgary, I will be there for when words collide in August. So you'll see there whether there are any signings per se, but I will definitely be there.
So Kelley, I'm usually the tech guy. I'm usually the behind the scenes guy. Was there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? Anything you want to touch on now that we didn't get to over the first 50 minutes?
Nope, absolutely not. It has been a great talk. Lots of talk on cold as hell, and then lots of opportunity to talk about what else I've got out there, coming out, have had out, etc.
So Kelley, last question. Where can folks find out more about you and your works?
Yep, I have a website which is currently being revamped, but it is there until it is, and it is kellyarmstrong.com. You will find me on Facebook. I usually do things like contests, giving away books, etc., talking about things like events. You'll find me on Blue Sky, talking about whatever, on Threads, writing stuff, and Instagram, posting pictures of scenery, my pets, etc.
All right. So with that, folks, let's give Kelley a big virtual round of applause for a great conversation. She carried me to a great conversation. Thank you so much, Kelley.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, for those watching live, please fill out the feedback survey when you exit the Zoom and look for the recording and with the follow-up email in about 30 minutes or so. So thank you all so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thanks again, Kelley.
Thank you. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.